I think if I probably had one thing that I could control, and it's a very odd thing to mention perhaps, it would be the stranglehold that right-wing media has on our country, has on the public. The way in which issues of race and class and deference are constantly both weaponized and ignored. If that sounds contradictory, it's because it probably is. But the rage that is harvested daily by precisely the people who benefit most from the status quo. We're so busy looking left and right to find people to get cross with that we constantly forget to look up. If I could, that's probably, in terms of political philosophy, that would probably be my most overarching concern. And you look at the consequences of it in America at the moment. You've got Donald Trump sitting in court, but of course Fox News, we now know, lied endlessly and egregiously about him and his ludicrous claims about winning the last election, up to and including the point where he pretty much inspired an armed insurrection against the elected government of his own country. So once you sell any semblance of decency or integrity or honesty, all bets are off. It can end up absolutely anywhere. Someone's texted me, Innate Keith, which I was about to say, that's a rubbish nickname for him, but it's from Keith, and he means innate. As when I said fundamental, it's not from that Keith. I don't know if you... It means innate, water, the importance of water. It's innate. I prefer fundamental, actually, Keith, with respect. There's fundamental, intrinsic to and that's why Victor in Wandsworth cares more about the state of our waterways than anything else. I should probably have a little look, shouldn't I, at Rishi Sunak's little list. Let me just call it up for you. It's very important. His little list. Here it is. Halve inflation. That is pretty much gravity, albeit that it was expected to come down last month and didn't. The idea that it isn't going to halve in the next 12 months or so is one that you would struggle to find an economist supporting. So that's a little bit like me promising to have 1 million listeners this time next year. You know, unless something goes absolutely horribly wrong, it's a given. Grow the economy fits very much into the same category as you come off the back of COVID and coronavirus, as you suffer more from economic damage than pretty much any developed economy in the world. By definition, you're more likely to grow. Something that Boris Johnson was very good at. We've got the highest growth in the G8, he would say, without mentioning that the main reason for that was that we had lagged so far behind the rest of them that by simply running to catch up, we move faster than they do, even though they're all still ahead of us on where they actually are. Reduce debt, cut waiting lists, and stop the votes. Stop the votes. Great list. Not a lot there for me. Cut waiting lists would be great, but who wouldn't want to cut waiting lists? Who wouldn't pledge to do that? In terms of the thing that is most likely to influence your vote, you're going to be looking at things that have happened over the last 13 years that the Tories are responsible for. So weirdly, they're responsible, entirely and exclusively responsible for the epic backlog in asylum processing. But whether or not that is the single most important issue for you at the moment, I don't know, because they're telling you to care about the dinghies, to care about the desperate people coming over in the dinghies. But if that really is your top political priority at the moment, then your anger should be directed not at desperate people in danger of drowning, but at politicians who have cynically and deliberately decided to press pause on the asylum process so they can build up a massive backlog while closing down all safe and legal routes into the country to create a crisis that they then, using very well-rehearsed racist red meat tropes, use to enrage you to a point where you thank them for promising to fix it. It's the most disgusting kind of politics imaginable. Reduce debt. What difference does that make to you and I? I'd rather see teachers being paid more or nurses going to work with a bit of a spring in their step. I may be naive of me, but goodness me, reduce debt. Grow the economy. Well, for whose benefit? I think that's great. It's great. Yeah, grow the economy. Growth is great. But last time we had a Prime Minister telling us that growth is more important than anything else, she tanked the economy in 10 minutes straight. So these are meaningless words. Victor in Wandsworth's passion for the state of our waterways is worth 1 million Rishi Sunak little lists. So what's at the top of yours? A genuine question. This is where I say don't ring me and say mad stuff. All right? It has to be something that is both electorally pertinent, plausible, possible, something that a party could say I really, really, really care about this, and something that really would be almost enough, perhaps not completely, almost enough to win you, regardless of how you voted in the past, regardless of what colour scarf you've spent your life, or indeed how tightly it's been tied around your neck. But in the way that Victor cares most about water, what for you is the issue you care most about? And I'll tell you why I'm asking you this question today. 52% because of Victor's contribution yesterday, but 48% because they're telling us now. Whenever I see the phrase silent majority, I always sigh a bit inwardly or roll my eyes. You do this for a living. There's no such thing as a silent majority, is there? It's like, the right-wing media that has pretty much a free hand in every corner of this country, except possibly the BBC. The right-wing voices are by far the loudest and by far the most common and by far the most frequently heard, constantly claiming they're the silent majority. I find it both hilarious and scary. A silent majority. We're the silent majority, says a bloke who's been on Question Time more times than David Dimbleby. We're the silent majority, says a columnist in the best-selling newspapers in the country. We're the silent majority, says some bloke who's been put in the House of Lords by Boris Johnson. We're the silent... I mean, what a load of old hokum. But people suck it up. And they are now telling us, largely the same people, are now telling us what we care most about. And at the moment, as far as I can tell, in the way that 30p Lee predicted or divulged or accidentally let the cat out of the proverbial bag, what they are telling you care most about at the moment are transgender toilets. And always remember, when you're listening to conversations about transgender toilets on LBC, there's one about 14 paces from this studio that we all use without any problems or complaints. Transgender toilets and refugees coming here in dinghies because the government has closed down any other method of genuine refugees getting to this country. That's what they are desperate to achieve, and it might work. It's not true at the moment. I can tell you, I see phone-ins about the transgender issue, which we may turn to a little later in the programme today for the first time in ages. The switchboard is very quiet, very, very quiet, but on people go with it. It's still banging away at that little drum, almost like Downing Street has issued instructions to Fleet Street. This must be a bigger story. This must be a bigger story. We've got to get it going. And then 30p Lee lets it slip in an interview that they've got nothing to fight the next election on, so they're probably going to go for transgender and culture wars. So it's refugees in boats and transgender. I don't believe that anybody intelligent or honest or decent truly considers that to be, or those to be, the single most important issue facing the massive majority of people in this country. Not during a cost of living crisis, not during an energy crisis, not during a period where social care is falling to pieces, the NHS is on its knees and job vacancies have reached record levels. What do you really care about? What do you really care about? Oh, refugees in boats and transgender toilets. Nonsense. That's what they want you to care about. It's not what you do care about. They send in their stormtroopers to try to control the national conversation, to try to manipulate consent, to try to deliver some sort of democratic boost from promising to fix problems they've created, while most people reporting on them don't mention the fact that the Tories are single-handedly responsible for every single problem that this country is currently addressing.